Thank you very much, Samuel, for the introduction and for the great job you're doing moderating this panel. And thanks very much to Elise and Federica for the invitation and for the great program. It's a tough job to talk after Ben's talk, actually. And I'm also going to narrow it down and talk about something quite specific and also, well, from within institutions. I'd like to contribute to the discussion with some examples of how internet-related art was shown, presented, framed, given a context that labels it as art. You might simply call it exhibited, and most of my examples also follow the traditional modes of the exhibition. This doesn't mean that some of the works don't have a life that is not framed and labeled. Much net-related art isn't labeled at all. It's just a website or text or images on a common platform. Paolo Gerbaudo mentioned 01's classic Vaticano.org website prank yesterday, a website pretending to be the one of the Vatican. Of course, there it was crucial that it wasn't labeled as art in the first place. But also in these cases, there are modes of presenting it as art to people interested in art as a second step, probably. So some of the questions guiding me through this little talk will be, where does the art take place? To whom is it shown? Who's the public? And what's the context for this process? My examples are from Switzerland, mostly from the city of Basel that played an important role in the beginning. Some examples are from the early history of internet-related art, and some will say something about digital institutionalization, which is the title of our panel, I think. Yeah. My examples are from Switzerland, mostly, yeah, that's what I already said. And in preparation of this talk, I spoke to three protagonists of the history. That was Barbara Strebel, Reinhard Storz, and Annette Schindler. And I asked them about their practice of enabling, showing, and commissioning net-based art and net-related art. In the second part, I will also talk about some exhibitions from my own curatorial practice. Well, Wolfgang Stähle's The Thing Network, founded in New York in 1991 as a bulletin board system, was one of the first net communities for artists, art theorists, and curators. Several largely independent nodes of the network formed internationally in the 90s. One of them was set up in Basel by Barbara Strebel in 1995. It was called The Swiss Thing. Well, we're in. So this is the flyer from the opening in 95. Barbara Strebel recalled these early days on The Thing as one big dialogue in search of new formats for art, but also, well, I think, for society. It was also the creation of non-commercial spaces against the beginning commodification of the web, of the net at the time. It was first a bulletin board system, then the web. It was part of defining the new medium, defining it also as a medium for the discourse of art. To the protagonists, it was important that it all happened outside the established institutions and outside the usual context, the authorities of the art world, and the usual cycle of how art is distributed, well, set hierarchies. Even if it wasn't clear in the beginning what this art on the internet exactly was. Barbara Strebel told me about collaborative formats, not far away from what happened later in the surfing clubs, someone feeding in material that was altered or reacted to by others. There were also performative formats exploring the new real-time communication formats. While a lot of the international network, The Thing, was the exchange between insiders, it was subscription-based. There was a paywall, for example, also. There was also the attempt to invite new people into this new medium called the internet. From the beginning, the Swiss Thing in Basel had a space, some sort of internet cafe. In the beginning, it was the @ Lounge, also a typical example for the language. So this sort of internet cafe, it also had a library with specialized texts and hosted talks and performances, for example, by Heath Bunting, or Eva Grubinger, net-based art, which was often process-based art and was frequently presented through narration. To conclude, the Swiss thing was an online and offline space where people, mostly from the art scene, got to know the internet as a culture, not just a technology. Our next protagonist is Reinhard Storz, who had been part of the team that ran the Swiss thing before he founded xCult in 1997. The second initiative I would like to talk about. xCult quickly became an important platform for the discourse on art and the internet with texts and with artworks. Reinhard Storz gave also lots of talks in institutions, schools, etc. Again, explaining, for example, simply clicking through online artworks in front of an audience was important. On xCult, there was explicitly the format of online exhibitions in group shows, and as it was also a platform to host some sort of solo shows or solo works. For his online exhibitions, Storz often commissioned works, of course within the parameters of a small, low-budget, independent online art space, not like the big institutions that were commissioning internet work at the time as well. Reinhard Storz told me that his main interest at the time lay in the questions of what new types of images would be possible in this new medium. I don't think his practice was that narrow, though. The net with the World Wide Web had become a medium of text-image communication on a graphic browser surface. And if we have a look at one of the early exhibitions on xCult, we can see that it wasn't just about the image, online or browser-based art, but also online-offline hybrids and social interaction. This is a group show called Shopping Mall from 1998, and the great thing is that it's still online. And it's, the format is like a parody of a web shop, also sort of a critique of the commodification of the web, but at the same time maybe also some sort of alternative market, as we had talked about that yesterday with the Whole Earth catalog. Anyway, there were works where you could actually buy something, like by Christoph Studer and Christoph Vandenberg and Monika Studer, a still life takeaway where you could put together your own still life from everyday material, and then it was the total cost was counted, and you could order it and it was sent to you as a printout. But other works were browser-based, like this one by Chumi and Chumi, Be Quick. This works much too fast today, so I'm going to show it again. This was modem times. So a little small browser piece working with the elements of the web at the time. So at xCult, the format became more palpable, the threshold was lower, and with his commissions and with knowledge exchange and tech support, Reinhard Storz also encouraged a lot of artists, especially from the Swiss scene, to try out the new medium. In 1997, there was also an exhibition of net-based art at the Documenta, curated by another Swiss, Simon Lamunière, and the dot-com bubble hadn't burst yet. So that's when internet art was ready for institutionalization in Switzerland. In 1995, the Forum for New Media was initiated by the city of Basel and one of the biggest foundations of the country. At the same time, the WIPA Festival for Video and New Media was encouraged to move to Basel after 20 years in Lucerne. The Forum for New Media opened a space in Basel called Plugin in the year 2000. So unlike the artist-run spaces I mentioned before, Plugin was clearly an institution, but the goal was still to find new formats for presenting new media art and especially net-based art. When I talked to Annette Schindler, the founding director of Plugin, she said she wasn't considering herself a pioneer anymore. The pioneers were the people like Barbara Strebel and Reinhard Storz here in Switzerland. She also said that at the time the first hype was already over. But the new thing was that this should be a permanent new space, new art space for insiders and the general public alike. There were some formats that needed a physical space, like big interactive installations that were also shown there. But net-based art didn't. Annette Schindler mentioned the dilemma between the explicit credo of internet artists to work outside the institutional legitimation hierarchies and a public that was happy to find a physical space where they could enter a world they wouldn't find or understand on their own. The general art public still didn't know that much about the internet. Annette told me that at the time she always had to start her presentations on net.art with explaining what a browser is, for example. In 2002, well, I think for the discussion, these are similar problems that we're facing when we try to talk about projects that Ben mentioned today. In 2002, Jodi's first solo exhibition in physical space took place at Plugin, curated by Annette Schindler and Tilman Baumgärtel. The two curators had convinced the net art pioneers to develop a way to exhibit their net-based works and make them accessible for newbies. Jodi's art happens in the browser and on the desktop, and yeah, well, first they didn't want to do it, I think. So there was what Michael Connor called, quote, the primary problem for net-based art in a gallery context, the difficulty to recreate the psychological space of the personal computer in a public space, unquote. What Jodi and the curators came up with in 2002 at Plugin was to hand a laptop computer out to the visitors at the entrance, so everyone had his own computer they were responsible for the duration of their visit. They could then plug them into the internet inside the exhibition that was pre-Wi-Fi and click through several Jodi artworks through a specially manipulated desktop surface, similar to the one of their OSS works. So the surface looked a bit like this. It was a manipulated surface. And then some of their software and net browser-based artworks could be watched or clicked through. In the same exhibition, they also showed manipulated ZX Spectrum games. I'm not going to talk about that. Well, when I started working at Plugin in 2004, the World Wide Web had become common, and I think I was about to open a MySpace account. NetArt was 10 years old, but still not established. The audience still wasn't that easy to convince that art could happen on the net, or art could be plugged in at all. After having worked there for a few years, it was refreshing to see a new generation emerge working differently with the net and crossing or ignoring boundaries between the media art world and the mainstream art world, or between online work and physical artifact. I didn't know Marisa Olsen's notion of art on the internet versus art after the internet at the time, and I didn't use the term post-internet, but I knew this was a practice that was adequate for the current state of the web, a web that wasn't a new territory to define anymore, but a banal, probably less open, yet still exciting place, visited by billions of people leaving traces, petabytes of material to be used. With a group of these artists emerging around collaborative blogs like Nasty Nets, I made the show Surfing Club at Plugin in 2010. Again, I was confronted with the problem of the psychological space of the personal computer. I wanted to include surf stations to integrate the dynamic collaborative practice of the surfing clubs and not just show individual work which had often already taken the form of an artifact. An example for the later would be these downloadable sculptures by Alexandra Domanovic. We had been printing out non-stop in our basement for the 2 weeks before the opening. For the surf stations, I decided that a no-frills setup with laptops we had sitting around would do. Everyone had a personal computer now, and it was becoming more and more personal, something I didn't attempt to simulate. On the other hand, using a computer just about everywhere had become totally normal. Here's another example from the show, Petra Kortwright's seminal webcam video. I insisted that the video published first on YouTube is also a performative piece of communication art on the weird communication space that is YouTube. So we showed the video in its online habitat framed by the YouTube website. So here's the video, and you know how YouTube looks like. But this included Petra's long list of spammy keywords that she used, and the hostile comments that people were reacting to her video. I'm still not sure if this was a good idea, also because YouTube changed its design in the middle of the exhibition. Well, these were first attempts. Looking back, it seems telling that just a few months before the Surfing Club show, the physical space of plugin had become whiter and more of a cube than it used to be. This is a before image. For a long time, it had this quite anti-white cube interior design by Federico Cambero. In the latest issue of Freeze magazine, Constant Toolart is criticizing post-internet artists for, quote, translating the commercialization of the web into artworks fit to be shown in the most hierarchical and conservative medium the art world has to offer, the gallery white cube, unquote. So is this just commodified art from the commodified web? I think the best of the post-internet bunch are aware of the idealist past of net art, have kept some sort of critical approach, and are interested in the part of history that took place in the unglamorous media art world. An example for this would be Oliver Laric's reaction to the invitation to last year's big name project that claimed to be the first online biennial. He made a long, incomplete timeline of online exhibitions and biennials that starts in 1991 with Wolfgang Stähle's The Thing. I want to apologize for using the term post-internet here. I just wanted to contribute something to the discussion that was sort of popped up last night. And I prefer to work with Marisa Olsen's original, rather narrow distinction between art on the internet and art after the internet, for art that is based on the use of material and from the internet, from the digital life, but not necessarily happens on the internet as a result. Well, nevertheless, I'm gonna more or less skip what I had planned to say about Oliver Laric's solo show that I curated at Skulpturhalle Basel, a very old institution, part of the Museum of Ancient Art. It's a plaster cast collection. I just want to mention that Laric used techniques of the art after the internet, like aggregation, rearranging, and comparing on the plaster cast collection in an institution where he could draw a straight line to the use of similar methods in the history of this institution, respectively in the history of art history. Maybe with Artie we can also talk about the secondary kinds of views that this exhibition got through the online documentation. Maybe some people believe that it was just 3D renderings, for example. Anyway, I'd like to conclude with an explicitly critical approach. Christoph Wachter and Mathias Jude's solo show at Kunsthaus Langenthal, the Kunstverein type of contemporary art space that I'm currently running in a small town of 15,000 citizens located between Bern, Zurich, and Basel. If I was talking about art on the internet and art after the internet, then Wachter and Jude's work is probably quite explicitly art about the internet as a culminating point of some of the burning political questions of our time. Their work often consists of working tools used, for example, by activists in China or the Syrian opposition at the moment, but they also work as means to discuss basic questions like censorship in the realm of the art space. Pigidea is one of their projects. It's a tool to circumvent censorship by transforming websites into pictures to avoid text-based filtering. New Nations is a way to create working top-level domain name endings for nations without a country, like the Kurds, .ku for the Kurds. And Call is a communication network completely independent from the internet and mobile phone networks. It works directly from machine to machine, computers or smartphones with the wireless capacities they have, and this can be enhanced by these types of simple antennas. The system is used, for example, by the Syrian opposition or in so-called illegal Roma communities in France. In Langenthal, the artists set up some sort of model call network. We are in the former town hall, and we have this bell tower, and they set up antennas here, for example, and connected the Kunsthaus with the library and other places where people could plug into this network. It also works, also the software that you use is distributed within this independent network. I'm not going into more details concerning the exhibition setting. That was mainly done by the artists. There was a lot of technology, a lot of computer stations and antennas. I just want to emphasize on the fact that while works like this still need some explanation, a dialogue with the public in classic forms like guided tours and handouts, and we also gave, the artists also gave a workshop on the Call project, for example. It was great to see that this is possible in a small town art institution and an art institution that is not specialized in so-called new media art. And I wanted to show you the first visitors of every exhibition at Kunsthaus Langenthal. These are our volunteers, mainly senior citizens of this small town. They are the first to get a guided tour, which is always a good reality check. And if digital institutionalization means that this kind of public will grasp some of the points of net-related art, then it's a good thing, I guess. This isn't meant to be a plea for the taming of the diverse net-related art practices through the White Cube institution. I'd rather like to encourage curators and artists to show diverse formats of net-related art in just about any non-institutional and institutional art context. It has never been as easy and as necessary as today, when we all start our days by checking our email or our Facebook on our smartphones that have replaced our alarm clock on the bedside table. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raffael. I'd like to call back Ben. I might start with highlighting just a few points of what was said.